Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yeonmi Park. I'm a nurse and defector human rights activist. Right before I came up to stage, I asked everyone, so has the audience eaten lunch yet? I was like, not yet. So I know you guys must be probably very hungry. And that made me think, this might be the perfect timing to talk about hunger, right? I think this is the only time Americans can sympathize what North Koreans go through. So I was born in North Korea. And when I was younger, my only dream was actually not becoming an activist or traveling the world. My dream was having one bucket of bread. When I was a child, I never ate until I was full. So actually, I never knew how much food would satisfy me and make me full. That's why there's a game that I was constantly playing with my sister that I can eat more food. I can eat the mountains of bread. And she says she can eat whatever I said 10 times more. And I would cry because I couldn't do more math than her. By the time when I was 13 years old, that was in 2007, we couldn't really find any more food. And one night, I was walking around my neighborhood, and that was the day I saw some lights coming from China. So how many of you actually seen the photo of North Korea at night, the satellite pictures? Yeah, some of you. I mean, basically, North Korea have an Earth Day every day. I know this is a perfect place for the climate activists. They can just go to North Korea. They don't have any pollution whatsoever. So at night, I was looking at the lights coming from China, and that's when I got some clue. Maybe if I go where the lights are, I might be able to find a bowl of rice. But even though I wanted to go, I couldn't go because I just got one day very, very bad stomach ache. My sister, who was 16 years old, I don't know how many are 16 here, she escaped first, and my parents took me to a hospital. And if you know about North Korea, it's a socialist paradise. Free education, free healthcare, everything's free that is provided by the government. In this free healthcare hospital, as soon as my mother took me to the doctor, they don't have electricity, they don't have x-ray machines. A nurse using 1 needle to inject on every patient. That afternoon, doctors just opened my stomach without any painkiller. They tied me, I was fainting and screaming, going back in between. When they opened my stomach, obviously, it wasn't my appendix that was in trouble. I was just simply malnourished, and I had infection. But the doctor still removed my appendix, so when I go back, I'm going to sue the doctor. This is the one thing I learned from America also, too. And after my surgery, this is the one last image still haunts me till this day. From my hospital bed to the bathroom, it was outside. I had to walk out to go to the bathroom. And there are piles of dead human bodies. And this is a lady wearing flower pattern pants. And her mouth was open, and rats were eating her eyes. Because that's the softest human tissue, the rats eating human eyes first. In North Korea, parents tell their children, don't eat the mutts. If you eat the mutts, you cannot go to the bathroom, you're gonna die. And children still eat the mutts because they are so hungry. I survived North Korea eating grasshoppers, dragonflies, any plants I could find. And you see these children catching rats that eating human flesh. That's when I realized I had to escape from that country no matter what it took. In 2007, I crossed the frozen river with my mother into China, not knowing what the world looks like. In North Korea, the regime doesn't even teach us what the map of the world look like. And this is so surreal to me because the only thing that a North Korean allowed to learn at school was about learning about American bastards. This was a one word. This is so surreal. Houston is a very special place in my heart because I learned at school in North Korean classroom that Americans are cold-blooded reptiles. If they see North Koreans, they're going to torture us and cut us into pieces and kill us. And the first time when I came to America, actually that was Houston, Texas. And arriving in Houston, Texas, I met some American friends. And I was imagining like what these people gonna do to me. And my friends were like eating chips, listening to Taylor Swift, drinking slush. I don't even know what that is. And they don't care that I'm coming from North Korea. That's how I finally got out of that brainwashing. But in North Korea, we are not allowed to even see the picture of Americans. The only thing that we are allowed to see though was the paintings of the monstrous-looking Americans. And crossing that frozen river, not knowing what was gonna happen. And the first thing I saw was my mother being raped. And then Chinese people told us, if you wanna stay in China, you have to be sold as sex slaves. And I couldn't believe, like, how do you sell another human being? Like, I'm not a puppy. I'm not a chicken. Like, what do you mean you're gonna sell me? Because of Chinese Communist Party one-child policy, there are 30 million Chinese men cannot find wives. So they buy North Korean girls for their sex toys. Just over 40. My mother was sold for $65. And they sold me just over $200 because I was 13 years old and I was virgin. But do you know, being a sex slave is not the worst thing that can happen to North Korean women. A lot of times they bought and their organs harvest out of them. And they get killed. And they sold in brothels. And people rape them until they die. They usually last 3 to 6 months. At this very moment, I'm standing here talking to you. There are 300,000 North Korean girls just like me right now in China are being sold as sex slaves. Luckily, 2 years of my slavery, by 2009, when I was 15 years old, I met the missionaries coming from South Korea. And they told me there was a way out of China and North Korea. And I asked them, how can I get out of this misery? And they said, if you walk across the frozen Gobi Desert into Mongolia, if you safely make it, then you can go to South Korea to be free. It is so miracle. I survived that Gobi Desert. I safely crossed the desert into Mongolia. And then I arrived in South Korea. So 5 years later in South Korea, I faced a lot of discrimination. And I wanted to go to a place where I could be who I am. So I chose to come to America. And in 2016, I started studying at Columbia University in New York. And I was so excited, like I'm going to the promised land. This is the best nation that's ever existed in entire human history, not just contemporary world. In the entire human history, this is the best country in the world. Thank you. And in the first orientation at Columbia, these students in their, I don't know, $100 yoga pants and the green juice detox on their schedule and telling me how they're oppressed in living in America, in Manhattan. I was like, I was asking them, what do you mean you're oppressed here? Like, why is America so bad? And I cannot forget this. They said, do you know, America is a bad place because we have inequality in this country. And I was thinking, what do you mean you have inequality? So that means you can rise compared to other people? In North Korea, of course, we don't have inequality because all of us are dying from starvation. The enemy is not inequality. The enemy is poverty. In the promise of getting rid of inequality and any kind of difference between people, the North Korean regime took entire our liberty. They took our personal property. They took our dignity away from us. And after they take all that back from people, they did not give anything back. Only thing they gave us was torture and starvation and slavery. So I'm here to tell you that inequality is actually a great thing. And the fact that we even have a language to express the oppression is. Do you know the actually oppressed people in North Korea? They don't even know the vocabulary oppression because the regime didn't teach us. How can you be oppressed? How can you be stressed living in a socialist paradise? So they even eliminated those words from the people. I'm so grateful you are here to hear about what actual oppression looks like. So when that actual oppression rises, we can fight back. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to my remark today. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, standing ovation. That's powerful.
Thank you so
That is powerful. Wow.
Thank you. Oh, it's okay. Thank you for
Look at
listening.
that. I mean, that was an amazing testimony, and I think you can tell from the crowd's reaction. They don't hear things like this. We hear about China a lot. We hear about Uyghur Muslim slaves. We don't hear about what's happening from North Korean girls and North Koreans trying to escape the regime and what they're doing. So I mean, thank you for sharing that in such a powerful and compelling way.
But thank you so much for mentioning that. Do you know why you don't hear about there is a modern day Holocaust happening?
Why?
Because nobody in America wants to stand up for North Korean people. That means they have to upset Chinese government. Recently, the Hollywood studio wanted to make a movie about my story.
Yeah.
And I got a script. And it says, China was my promised land. Chinese government was helping me out, not America. And I asked the producer, this is a lie. This is not what happened. It's like, that is the only way we can make a movie in Hollywood right now. I met so many powerful business people. They say, don't say that you know me, because they all have a business in China. And because China sponsored this dictatorship in North Korea, and they enslaved North Korean people, Michelle Obama, Oprah Winfrey, no feminist in America wants to stand up for the girls in North Korea.
Do you think that's changing? I mean, do you think that, I mean, you're here, you're on Joe Rogan, right? Like, people are listening to you in America. Do you have hope that we are understanding now what's going on? Do you have hope that I certainly see it among Americans, but also the international community, that we're seeing China for what they really are. We've always known North Korea is what they are, but the Chinese have managed to escape that reality. Do you have hope that we're learning it now?
It's funny, I came to America like not knowing what left or right is, and having no even clue, because the regime taught us that I was Kim Il-sung race. They don't even teach me that I'm Asian.
Yeah.
That's how they keep us so ignorant. And of course I came to America, and the only people interested in hearing about what's happening to North Korean people are the ones in the more conservative world, the ones that call the bigots and racist. So I don't know. I haven't called anybody from mainstream or New York Times or CNN wants to cover this story.
What are some of the things that you notice most that Americans just don't appreciate about their own country? You know, this is a time in America where left or right, people are very pessimistic. They feel like it's the worst they've ever had it. What do you think? What do you feel when you hear that? And what are some of the funniest examples?
I mean, the people, like I said, right? I came to New York, and my friends would pay like $10-20 to buy salad. And
that is too expensive for salad.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, that was my rabbit food.
Yeah.
In North Korea, that's what I ate with my bunny when I was starving. And these people, vegans, they chose to be vegans and taking, I know nobody forcing them, but they chose to take the calories away from their lives. And what I think scares me right now is not just the point Americans don't appreciate what they have. They are so willing to and wants to dismantle the system. That's what Columbia University professor tells us, that the only hope that we have is dismantling current system and tear down the Constitution. And another thing that really bothered me was how America used race to divide people. North Korea uses the exact opposite thing because we don't have race problem. It's America, this concept of white guilt or white privilege. My great-grandfather supposedly owned a tiny land in front of his garden. So he was a landowner. So they marked entire my family generations that we have a tainted blood. We can never redeem it because he was a landowner.
Yeah.
People get punished for something they didn't do. I didn't own the land. I just was born because that was my grandfather. And now I have a son who is half white. He needs to be guilty about his ancestors' crime.
Right.
And that is how the North Korean regime divide people and oppress people and control people. And exactly it's happening in America. They use the same ideology to control people and divide people.
That's something we hear from people who have escaped North Korea, escaped Cuba, escaped Venezuela, escaped the Soviet Union, is that they come here and they're so happy. We're like, we finally found the man's last best hope on earth. But we're hearing the same things. We're hearing the same phrases about inequality. And you mentioned inequality. What are some of the other words? I know you talk about sometimes, I don't know if this is connected, but you talk about how the word love doesn't mean the same thing here in America as it does in North Korea. I don't know if that's along these same lines, but I think it's interesting how a lot of the same parallels happen before the tyranny.
So a few years ago, Kim Jong-un banned Mother's Day. Do you know why?
No.
Because he was worried that if we love our mothers, we are going to love the dictator as much. The only thing...
That's some insecurity, isn't it?
Massively. He needs therapy at this.
Yeah. I mean, look at him. How could you not be insecure?
Yeah. But that's a sad part. Like, love is the fundamental reason why we exist.
Yeah.
But even that he denies for us. I've never heard my father told me that he loved me. I've never seen my parents saying they love each other because that wasn't allowed. The only thing that people were allowed to love in North Korea was the Communist Party and the fat dictator. Wow. So, exactly the fat dictator, right?
Yeah, it's like this. It's the worship of government, and I think we see that same trend in the progressive left here, where erase religion, erase your familial ties, erase that sense of community, so that you have to rely on government. The parallels are there, and I think what you're doing to reveal it to people and to show people that us right-wingers, we're not just making stuff up. Conservatives in America are not just making things up. Yeah, sometimes we get a little crazy. We hoot and holler a little bit, but we're not crazy. Like we're onto something here. This is real, and I think you reveal that. I think these kids have a lot of questions for you. Are you okay with taking a couple questions from these kids? Go ahead and line up, and just remember, you've got to enunciate to us very clearly because of the echoes. You can hear us well, but we can't hear you as well. start here.
Hi, my name is Summer, and I just was curious to know what are ways right now, like right here, the best ways that we can support the North Korean cause?
It's a great question.
Right here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're here. I mean,
Can you do something? Can you do something? Because this is, I don't know who to talk to anymore. There are hundreds, thousands of young girls are being sold. Nobody wants to do anything about this because they don't want to speak up against China. And I don't know, how can we solve this?
Look, I think what we're doing now is it's not enough of a first step, but most people don't even know. Most people don't even know what you just said about 300,000 North Korean girls enslaved in China. 99% of America doesn't know that. So that's the first step, revealing the evil of the Chinese regime. And constantly showing North Koreans, as we try to do to Iranians, to Venezuelans, to Cubans, we are against the government. We are not against the people. And you have a home here when you escape. And we should also pressure our South Korean allies better on this too. I mean, you mentioned that, Rob. I've spent some time in South Korea. You know, there's the hermit kingdom of the North Koreans. There's a different kind of hermit kingdom there. And you know, it's difficult. I mean, they have a process for defectors for coming down from North Korea, but it is difficult for them. And I think working with our ally South Korea to do something about that would be a good first step also.
Also, can you sign my brother's hat?
Yeah, throw it up here, sure. Yeah. Okay, we'll get a marker. I don't think I can sign it with a pen. We'll get a marker. Grab a marker and we'll get it done for you. Yeah, our staff has it. Let's go over here.
Yeah, so I know a lot of people, friends who are like ungrateful for what they have, right? And people are just like ignorant when you tell somebody like, hey, be grateful for what you have. So what would be the best way for me to, I know you just gave us your story, and I could always tell people about your story, but even after that fact, people are still like, oh, whatever. You know what I mean? So what would be the best way to reach them and just get them to be grateful and like see like this is happening right now?
It's so there are only above 200 North Korean defectors over the last almost 80 years got admitted to America as refugees. That's very little. Just over 200 people made to freedom that far. So I think at this point we need some radical solution. Anybody says they hate America and they want to leave this country, we need to send them to North Korea and bring North Koreans to America. Thank you.
Will you sign their hat? Here, I'm going to say right here.
Of course.
You got some fans here, Yeonmi. There you go. Next question.
Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
All right. I don't really have much of a question, but more of a request. Will you sign my book, please?
Of course.
They're getting bold. Okay. This is good. All right. We'll get it. Next question.
Hi, my name is Sophia Finch, and I've lived in the Houston area for almost 4 years now. And I just have come to understand that the Houston area is the #1 sex trafficked city in America. And how do we defend people who are going to be victims of that?
That's a great question. I think most of people do not understand this. They somehow that slavery ended with with the Civil War. That's not when it ended. Slavery right now continuing. There has been never a time this many human beings were enslaved. This is called modern day slaves. And not only that, do you know, more than 4 billion human beings right now are not free? Like just even thinking about 1.3 million people in China, North Korea, actually being free, we are being in a minority. And if we understand that, what a power and what a responsibility we should fear, having this freedom, that all of us might lose freedom, right? So I think we need to understand, like, the slavery never ended. And there are so many people, more than half of us are not free right now.
It's a great question. It's an important point about Houston. It's something we've been dealing with from a policy perspective for a while. And people have to understand what human trafficking is. It's not necessarily like the movie Taken. It can be, in really dark, dire circumstances. In what Yeonmi's describing, it kind of is like that. In America, it's not quite like that. Right? You get sort of bred into this group. You start hanging out with bad friends, and then maybe it's a boyfriend that like suckers you into this world, and all of a sudden you're in it. And it's you know, maybe they get a girl addicted to drugs, and then they use that as leverage. There's a lot of ways it happens. If you look at some of my earliest podcasts, I interviewed a woman who this happened to just in the Katy area, and it happens over time. And so the best way to combat it for you young people is to know about it. You have to understand what the signs are. You have to understand what it is and what it isn't, and how to avoid it. And there's this whole other problem with what's happening on the border. There's a lot of human trafficking that happens with that. It's similar but different. A lot of these people are lied to, told they're going to be a movie star in New York, and then they're locked in a basement for 5 years. So again, this is another reason the border is such a big problem.
Thank you so much for coming here, Yeonmi. Great, harrowing story. I was just going to ask about the education that you spoke about, that you came here to America and you got an education and furthered that. How has that affected this journey? Are you using that education right now as we're seeing you speak? Is that something that you think would be a path for people who defect and come here later to pursue a further education in American studies?
I will not send my son to Columbia.
Yeah, got mixed reviews at Columbia, I think. Yeah.
I mean, that's for sure. I mean, at some point, like sitting in the Columbia classroom, how they teach you, you need to look for the bigotry behind the trees, like everywhere, like the paranoia that implant you. And like even like one day, the professor was asking who liked to read Jane Austen. And I was like, yeah, that's a great literature. Like, that's how you get brainwashed. Because she was a white supremacist, and she had a white colonial mindset. And at some point, you think that Kim Jong-un learned from Columbia faculty to brainwash North Koreans. I mean, that anti-American sentiment is worse in the American Ivy League education system. So after Columbia, I started reading books, like your book, Fortitude, and so many books.
That's an honor.
That's how actually I started seeing the truth.
The majority of America is like that. And that's the good news, so we're with you. And it's really cool that you have had these kind of experiences from North Korea, but then you went to Columbia of all places. It's one of our worst for that kind of woke problems. And you're just such an amazing spokesperson to connect all of these dots. It's just fantastic.
Hi, thank you. My name is Abel. I'm just like starstruck right now. I'm sorry, but thank you for coming here so much. I guess my question is, I remember listening to you talk about life, and it was, if you don't mind, it was during where you were talking about you had your owner. I guess he brought your dad over and your family, and all the shit, all that things, like everything that was terrible that he did, but he did these good things. And I guess whenever you said like that's life, it felt like it wasn't like bad or good, it was just life, And I guess, do you see it as a good or a bad thing, like life? Like, how do you see life, I guess? I don't know. And
yeah.
Can you sign my little book, like my little journal? Thank you.
Yeah, so you're talking about the trafficker who bombed me, and I want to kill myself. And he said, if I become his slave and be raped by him, he was going to save my parents for me. And I did become his sex slave, and he did bring my father from North Korea, who was very sick. I think that's the thing, nothing is black and white. And I think of course I forgave him. And what I am sad about America was, with this cancel culture that I am getting also cancer now, but America was a country with mercy, that we have mercy and we forgive people. And I think that's what we need. Like, this country becomes like North Korea. You need to get punished. You can never get redeemed again. And I think like him, of course he did a horrible thing to me, but he still has some goodness in him.
I guess guess
Yeah.
that was the thing, is that
Uh,
I'm sorry.
we're good. Next. Go ahead. We got one more.
Hi, my name is Shervin Tavakoli. I'm from Katy, Texas, west of Houston, and I'm Persian, and the Iranian people, they're controlled and oppressed by the government as well in their own different way. So I'm first generation American, and I was gonna ask, how do you feel about like these movies, news, and social media perspectives of people with influence, like celebrities and actors, that show North Korea and Korea, and just in the entertainment way of, like, for example, with Squid Game or the movie The Interview, that talk about North Korea and Korea and just these oppressed countries that are controlled by governments in a kind of entertainment kind of way.
Are you familiar with The Interview?
I mean, it's
It's a comedy.
yeah. The satire comedy is. I get that it's in freedom. It's one of our right to make fun of things, right? It's our right. But as a North Korean, nothing about Kim Jong-un is funny. It used to bother me so much. Like, only thing that media wants to talk about was his haircut. And nothing about what's happening there is a joke. When something just so funny, you lose the gravity of the effect on that issue on the real people. And I think that was missing. Of course, I respect their freedom rights to make the funny of Kim Jong-un, but nobody tried to really show the true gravity of this crisis. And I think the fact that we can have this conversation knowing that North Korean regime is not a joke. They are having nuclear weapons, can threaten even America. And as long as this dictatorship is there, or even Iranian dictatorship is there, that we are not safe here.
Let's give
Thank you.
Yeonmi Park a huge round of applause. Thank you so much. This has been incredible.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Right, I loved it. I mean, that was amazing.